Hello and welcome to Hindsighting, where we discuss all the movies to win the Best Picture Oscar and try to figure out if this picture truly is the best or has time rendered a different verdict. I'm Edward Clow, and my guest today is a three-time Bloodless screenwriter whose feature film credits include The Inheritance, the Bruce Willis starring Hard Kill, The Locksmith, Soulmates, and the Lifetime thriller The Au Pair Nightmare. As a producer, his feature credits include the Mickey Rourke starring horror anthology Nightmare Cinema and the Zac Efron and Russell Crowe starring The Greatest Beer Run Ever. In the podcast space, he produced 7 seasons of the award-winning horror series Postmortem with Mick Garris. Here's hoping we do half that well. Joe Russo, thank you for joining me in Hindsighting.
Ed, it is such a pleasure to be here and such a privilege to be the first guest.
Very first guest, Neil Armstrong.
Wow, yeah, we're and hopefully people will leave this episode entertained.
Yes, I think they will. So today we're hindsighting the Best Picture of 2000, Gladiator. From 12 nominations, it also won Oscars for Best Actor, Best Sound, Best Costume Design, and Best Visual Effects. It was nominated against Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Chocolat, Aaron Brockovich, and Traffic. Now, Joe, before we get into Gladiator proper, I kind of wanted to explain to you and to the audience and to sort of a mini project here that you'll be the first sort of subject for. So I was given the very good advice to start in the year 2000 because it wouldn't be so long ago that these movies are ancient history, but it's recent enough that, you know, some of us, depending on our age, might have seen these in theaters. And Gladiator...
They might have even seen a sequel last year.
Yes. A sequel I have not seen. I wanted to try and squeeze that in before. We can talk about that. But yes, there was a sequel just last year. So this is the reason, and this is the general question I want to throw to you. You and I may have even discussed this in one of our many lunches, but I want it on the record. And maybe we haven't discussed it. Either way. So in the summer of 2009, like a lot of people, it occurred to me that I was like, oh shit, the 2000s are almost over. And I started thinking about what are the best movies of the 2000s, you know, just off the top of my head without like getting a spreadsheet out. I just was sort of thinking, as I probably was thinking a decade earlier when it was 1999. And I came up with a thesis that I want to present to you, but I also kind of want to interrogate because I think that these first 10 or 12 episodes that we'll be doing here, I might change my mind. So what I said in 2009 is that I feel that the 2000s was the worst decade of movies. I won't say ever. I'll modify. Back then I said ever, but I'll say in my lifetime that I lived through. So I was born in 78, so I don't remember the 70s, but I definitely remember the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and the 2 decades past, the 2010s, and we're halfway through the 2020s. It just seemed to me, looking back, and I didn't feel this way during the 2000s. Again, I didn't have this so-called revelation until 2009. But looking back, it seemed to me that like almost at the stroke of Y2K, that movies just weren't as good. And I think 9/11 had a bit to do with it. I won't get partisan. I'm not saying this is George W. Bush's fault, but I think 9/11 hit the water supply around 2003. I think, and this is something you can speak to, I think that there was an industry thinking that like nobody wants to see anything challenging, or there was less challenging things made because the country had gone through this horrible tragedy. I think there was an overreaction to an honest, a genuine tragedy. But I also felt like indie film, we saw that kind of die. There was fewer cool Sundance movies. So, I mean, what do you think? Am I nuts? Do you agree? Disagree?
So every year there's somebody who inevitably says this is the worst year for movies ever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And I genuinely believe that that person probably just hasn't drilled down and watched enough movies.
That's fair.
Because when I started looking through specifically the year 2000, right, I went to Box Office Mojo and I looked at the highest grossing movies of that year just so I could get a sense of what came out again, so we could talk Gladiator in context. And I went like, wow, there are some real stinkers this year.
Yeah.
But there's also some great movies. I think that's the problem, is every year there's maybe between 8 and 20 truly great movies. And then it's surrounded by a bunch of good to mediocre stuff,
Sure.
and then a handful of bad movies. Just as many bad movies probably as there are great movies. And I think that's honestly the case with every year.
Mhm.
I think that when you look at the 2000s as a decade, I would actually push back against that. I actually think the 2010s were worse,
Really?
and I think they were worse for a very specific reason. Um, in the 2000s, at least, there was a healthy DVD market, at least for the majority of that decade.
Mhm.
And because there was a healthy DVD market, it meant that the studios could make smaller and weirder movies. And we were getting more smaller and weirder movies. And not that those were always good, but we were getting them. And then once the 2007-8 writer's strike hits, the
Mhm.
recession hit, and the DVD market went away, so did Hollywood's appetite to make smaller and weirder movies. And what came along was cape shit, superhero stuff, Marvel stuff.
Mhm.
And we got this decade of franchises,
Mhm.
like the dirtiest word in the history of cinema, I
Sure.
think.
Yeah.
And so I actually think I look back on the 2000s with maybe nostalgia blinders, but with nostalgia blinders for that reason. And maybe it's also too because we're a couple of years apart,
Yeah.
and so for me, I really came up in age for movies in 2003 2004. So I have an especially like the nostalgia for me for that era of movies is off the charts. I mean, just that window of alone of movies that like rocked me: Kill Bill, Return of the King, Lost in Translation, Collateral,
Mhm.
Spider-Man 2, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I mean, that's just like off the top of my head,
Yeah, and
right?
that's yeah. No, go
Big
ahead.
Fish.
Yeah.
And but like, and to me, I didn't get any movies like that in the 2010s. Like maybe Mad Max Fury Road,
Mhm.
Social Network, but like but now we're talking over swath of years as opposed to like one calendar 12-month period,
Yeah,
right?
the movies you rattled off were, like, all '03, '04, so it's like a year, year and a half tops that
Yeah, and
I mean,
that's just 1 year and a year and a half
that's what I'm
tops,
saying, like,
actually.
that's a very tight grouping of movies. I think yeah, I mean, I'd have to hear the list again, but I think all those movies were '03, '04, give or take.
Now, when we talk specifically about 2000, which we're going to talk about with in relation to Gladiator,
Yeah.
I feel like 1999 was I think pretty much universally agreed maybe the strongest movie year ever. Uh
There's a book about it, which I'm sure you've read, Brian Raftery's book.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and it's incredible what came out during that period of time.
right.
And yeah, so it's like that year by comparison to 2000, sure, 2000 definitely feels weaker.
Yeah.
But there's some great movies, especially when we look at what got nominated that year too.
Mhm.
Um, and I do think there's a case that the best movie of that year didn't actually win any awards. And so that'll be my hot take, but I'll save that for a little
No,
later.
and that's what this show's about. I mean, I said in my preview episode, but if people maybe haven't heard that, or people are just listening to this because they like Gladiator, like people could just wander into this podcast because they just like Ridley or Gladiator. What I said, I won't do the whole spiel, but what I said is, the show isn't about bashing the Oscar winners. It's really about highlighting what was missed. But yeah, I mean, I think the reason I wanted to do this show was that I think the majority of the movies that win aren't the best, which is not to say that they aren't good. Um, but yeah, I wanted to throw that question to you, and I'm glad you're pushing back on it because it's one of those things that I'm glad you brought up the age difference too, because I think I'm only 6 years older than you. It's not quite a generation, but you're experiencing this decade at a, for lack of a what,
Yeah, when you were falling in love with movies, it was in the mid '90s. When I was falling in love with movies, it was the early 2000s.
right. So
And
so
that's I think the difference.
yeah, and
Right?
I want to talk to, my plan is to talk to, obviously I want a diverse guest list, not just racially and gender, but I want to talk to some younger people too because I'm fascinated to know, like, this is a weird comparison, but or maybe it isn't. I mean, I'm not the world's biggest Star Wars guy, so I don't get
Mhm.
mad about the prequels. But George Lucas has said that he talks to people who were little kids when the prequels came out, and they prefer them to 4, 5, and 6. Now, we're not gonna make this about Star Wars, but I think he has a point. He's a very smart man, and I think it's just about, it's just about what age you are when you encounter things. I mean, I spoke to someone who's maybe a decade younger than me, and to her, James Bond is Pierce Brosnan because that's who was James, and
Sure,
to my
sure,
father, it was Sean Connery,
right.
so it's I think and we'll get into this in a second. I think where you're at when you first see stuff is, to be Captain Obvious, is obviously a huge factor. Um, so yeah, I
I
think this
also
is
just think like, look, Guillermo del Toro has a quote, and I rip it off all the time
yeah,
because it was like one of the smartest things I've ever heard about being a film fan and why it's so challenging to be a film fan. But he equated going to the movies like going to church. You go every week and you hear probably like an average to mediocre sermon, but every once in a while you hear a sermon that changes your life.
mm,
And that's why we keep going back. We keep going back to the movies to get those ones that change your life. They're not going to be every week. They're going to be maybe like 5 to 10 movies that really speak to you a year.
yeah,
And uh, and so it can become in the moment. It can be like, oh, this year sucks because I've seen so much crap. But when you really do an accounting of it,
mhm,
I think it really changes. I mean, we are both on it now, and I feel like maybe I encouraged you to join, but Letterboxed,
yeah,
I think is hugely helpful for that.
yeah,
Um, because especially like the last couple of years when I've made my year end list, it's been so much easier to go back through and see the stuff and be like, oh my god, I completely forgot I watched that movie this year.
sure,
Or I forgot this movie came out this year. And so to me, like that's kind of changed the game and the conversation too. Especially when we're going back and we're looking at these kind of nostalgic periods. And so yeah, no, I think I'm excited to dive in. Like, you want to talk Gladiator?
let's talk Gladiator. I'm gonna throw a couple just fun stats, and then we'll get right into the movie. So I don't know if you knew this, but this fascinated me. This is the first Best Picture winner to not win an Oscar for either writing or directing in 51 years since All the King's Men. So just to clarify for people, did not win
Interesting.
Best Director. It did not win Best Screenplay either. Did not win Adapted or Original Screenplay. That hadn't happened since 1949. Incredibly, it happens 2 years later with Chicago, and it has not happened since. So 22 years the Best Picture winner has won either directing and or writing. So I thought that
Yeah.
was an interesting stat. At 2 hours and 35 minutes, it is number 73 in ascending length. It's number 74 if you count Sunrise, which is a whole other conversation we'll get to in the Wings episode, whenever the fuck I do that one. Um, this one actually surprised me, Joe. Maybe you knew this. Um, it's actually number 5. It's the 5th highest grossing Best Picture winner. I knew it was a hit, but at 460 million worldwide, it's number 5. I mean, I would have guessed 10,
Oh
15,
yeah.
20.
No, it was like a big May release. I mean,
Yeah,
that was like it was like the movie of the summer.
it
People
was the
were really
first
excited.
movie. Yeah. So, well, let's get into it. So, I know you're a fan. I mean, I know we'll tie it together. On Letterboxd, I saw that you'd given this 5 stars, and I wanted you for the first episode, and I was like, I want to do Gladiator for the first episode, so I was like, this is kismet. I would have booked you even if you gave it 1 star, but the fact that you liked it so much was definitely so. Letterbox is a word we're going to be hearing a lot for the entire life of this podcast. But tell me about. So obviously you like this movie, you've seen this movie. Tell me about the first time you saw it. How old were you? Do you remember the circumstances? Tell me everything.
I was in high school.
Okay.
I saw it at the Showcase Cinemas in Southington, Connecticut, which was not a very glamorous movie theater, but it was the closest one to my hometown.
Okay.
We didn't have a movie theater in my hometown at that point, so we had to drive to the next town over to go see movies.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, it was a pain in the butt. We either had to go to North Haven or we had to go to Southington, and it was like a 20-minute, 25-minute drive in either direction. So it was a thing to go to the movies.
Wow.
Yeah, but I remember being in a minivan with a bunch of my friends, jazzed out of our minds to go see this movie. And I really think there's a very specific reason this movie spoke to the masses in that one cultural moment. And it's funny because it's something that like I think started in the late '90s and really peaked in '99 and 2000, and really kind of just collided with Gladiator, and that's professional wrestling.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, the Attitude Era, Stone Cold Steve Austin,
Uh-huh.
uh, all of that stuff. It's amazing the parallels between the stories that were happening in wrestling and how that was catching fire, and the story that was happening in Gladiator. And it's very much about this one renegade taking on an authority figure and winning the hearts of the crowd because of it. And both of those, like the fact that both of those things became huge cultural touchstones in that exact same moment, I think speaks to this like late '90s Limp Biscuit angry male angst that
Yeah,
was happening at that time.
which I remember very well.
And I think Gladiator, like the Stone Cold Steve Austin, Mr. McMahon storyline in wrestling, I think Maximus going after the Emperor had that same. It was tapping into that same zeitgeist moment.
Hmm.
Uh, and so, yeah, I loved wrestling at the time. I still do,
Yeah.
but I loved wrestling in that exact moment more than probably ever. And I think this hit all of those same notes for me.
You were about 16, 15, 16.
Hang on.
May
I,
of 2000.
yeah, I'm doing math. I was 15 going on
15
16.
going on 16.
Yeah.
Um,
So it
yeah,
was the perfect time to watch like this testosterone fueled gladiatorial epic.
yeah. So I'll yeah, so I was in between I was in between finishing college and college graduation. We had a thing called, maybe all schools had a thing called senior week, and where like classes
Mm.
end and you just like kind of party and do all this fun stuff, and then graduation's about a week later. And Gladiator came out in that time, and it's something it was on my radar because I like and still like Ridley Scott, and Russell Crowe was an actor I really liked the last couple of years. I go back to The Quick and the Dead with Russell Crowe, which was, I think, one of his first American movies. It wasn't a hit, but it was
I
definitely.
love The Quick and the Dead. I got to see it at the Egyptian Theater last year
Uh,
as part of a Sam Raimi triple feature.
oh,
It
really?
was awesome. Sold out crowd, great
Yeah.
audience, looked amazing on the big screen.
Yeah. Quick and the Dead
I've been
is.
working on a project with Sam for a little while now, so it was really just a special afternoon at the movies for sure.
Yeah.
Really fun movie.
So it was on my radar, but the circumstances under which I saw it was very funny because my friend Matt commented on it. We were in upstate New York. It was hot as all get out and humid, and everybody was interested in this movie. But the impetus to see this movie was to get in air conditioning. And then as the lights went down, my friend Matt, I'll never forget this, said like he's like, this is like something out of like the 50s. Like we're really just going to the movies to get in the air conditioning. But but yeah, I remember seeing it and you know digging it and then kind of forgetting about it. Like thinking like, oh yeah, that was fun. There was some cool this and that. I remember drawing a lot of parallels to Spartacus, which obviously was an influence, but I was told by someone far more knowledgeable it's much closer to the movie The Fall of the Roman Empire in terms of its
yeah,
story, which I have not seen, but I had to think that Spartacus, just for the battle scenes alone, because Spartacus, for people who don't know, the Stanley Kubrick movie, it was kind of Kubrick's. If there was a Marvel back then, it was sword and sandal epics, and that was
sure.
Kubrick
Oh,
doing
totally.
his
Yeah.
one paycheck movie, which he was very dismissive of. But and it's my least favorite Kubrick movie, but it's still pretty good. And the battle scenes are very very good, and that had to be an influence, probably a conscious influence for Ridley Scott. But
Oh my God, of course.
yeah, yeah, I saw it and I was like, "Oh yeah, that was cool." And then I just didn't really think about it. And then when it entered the Oscar conversation, you know, 8 months later or whatever it was, I was kind of surprised. But on the other hand, this was during, which you may remember, this was when the Oscars was this dogfight between Miramax and DreamWorks. Miramax famously or infamously stole, I mean, I'm using that a little bit in quote marks, Shakespeare in Love wins over Saving Private Ryan, which is a huge
Which, by
upset.
the way, I totally memory hold when I went and saw Saving Private Ryan on the big screen a year or two ago at USC. I swore it won Best Picture, and
Yeah, it's almost the
that
Mandela
whole thing
effect.
floored me again.
Yeah,
Which again, is why I think this is a great format for a podcast.
Thank you.
Uh,
Yeah, well, it's a lot of people. It's interesting because a lot of people. You bring up a good point, and I thank you for that compliment. But a lot of people who aren't like us, who aren't cinephiles, who don't work in the industry, who just have like a passing interest and knowledge in the Oscars. A lot of people probably think Saving Private Ryan won because they remember it won 7, I think, other awards. It won like,
right.
director, editing, cinematography, sound. It won like almost everything it could win. Just like some people, whenever we get to 1976, I mean, people might not know that Rocky won. They might think that, All the President's Men won because that makes total sense. They might think that Network won. They might think that Taxi Driver won because
Yeah.
that all sort of makes sense because those are all famous, well-regarded classic movies. Um, but the interesting thing, and I want to get your take on this, is something without really doing a lot of research because I just have this in my head. This is a really important movie for Ridley Scott because his 90s weren't successful. I'm not saying these movies weren't good. I haven't seen all of them, but he makes Thelma and Louise in 91, which is one of his best movies. It's his first Oscar nomination. I think it's pretty highly regarded as one of his best movies after, your Alien and Blade Runner and a few other things. But then it's, 1492, which was a bomb. Haven't seen it. I won't comment on it. White Squall, I haven't seen. And G.I. Jane, which I like, but somebody made a point that G.I. Jane is kind of a Tony Scott movie. Tony's was Ridley's brother. And that's
Yeah.
not an insult because I revere Tony Scott, but it's weird that like,
The funny, let me just comment on that real quick.
please,
The
please.
funny thing about the Scott brothers is when Ridley has a great script, he can knock it out of the park further than Tony ever could. But Tony was a more consistently great filmmaker.
110%. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the line between the great Tony Scott movies and the not so great is razor thin because even the not
Yep.
so, and the only Tony Scott movie I haven't seen is Domino, and I do want to see it.
Which, by the way, has its pleasures.
Yeah,
This
but I ranked I have a work in progress Tony Scott ranked list on Letterboxd. It's only work in progress because I haven't seen Domino. But if you just look at it, it's like, yeah, I mean, the ones I rank low are not that much worse than the ones I rank like your Top Guns and your True Romances. I mean, yeah, I think Tony Scott was more consistent, but obviously Ridley Scott, I mean, if he retired after Blade Runner, he would have made the two most important science fiction movies that are not called Star Wars, Alien and Blade
yeah,
Runner. I mean, those are examples in their genre. And those, I mean, look, we have an Alien TV show now. I don't even know
yeah,
if he's
yeah,
involved in it,
yeah.
but like, and we had a Blade Runner sequel, a very good one, just a few years ago. So
No, his influence is incredibly far-reaching. I mean, Ridley Scott's one of my favorite filmmakers.
yeah,
Like he's I think Ridley is like supremely talented and one of my favorite filmmakers. And I also just love his personality, like his just take no prisoners, no bullshit,
yeah,
cigar chomping.
yeah.
Like I heard a really great story in film school about Ridley, if you allow me to
Please.
indulge. This screenwriter came in and talked to us about the time he pitched to Ridley Scott. And so he goes in and he's got his whole spiel planned out. And for people who don't know, when you go in and you pitch a movie to an executive or a director or whomever, you basically are going to walk them through the whole story essentially.
Mm.
And so he gets maybe like 2 or 3 beats into his pitch, and Ridley's across the table smoking a cigar, and he just goes, "Bullshit." and and the writer like didn't know what to do. He's like, "So do I keep going? Like, I guess I keep going." So he just keeps going, and he starts into the pitch again, and then really goes, "Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit," and he stops him, and he goes, "Look, this is the problem with your story," and he walks him through the issue, the core issue, and the writer went, "Holy shit, he's right."
Mhm. Yeah.
But I love that. I love that he's just across the table smoking a cigar, and he stops him mid-sentence with bullshit.
Yeah.
It feels very Ridley Scott.
Yeah, and
Uh,
what's incredible is that if you just look just at the filmography, putting aside the quality of the movies, he gets so much more prolific. He's like already in his 60s here. He's like 62 or 3. And in the last 25 years, he's made a movie a year, sometimes 2 movie a years. His
yeah,
output is like Soderberghian.
Yeah,
where it's
yeah.
like, and
But every time he's spending $200 million
right,
plus.
he's not like Soderbergh. He's not shooting these things on an
Yeah.
iPhone. They're not
The,
experimental.
the blessing and a curse I've heard from some studio execs who have been on the other end of Ridley Scott movies is yay, Ridley Scott signed on, we're making a movie. Oh no, it's going to cost $75 million more.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, let while we're on him, what is your favorite one or two? I won't make you commit, but like, do you have a favorite Ridley Scott or a couple that are like Black
Oh,
Label?
I mean, I think that the holy trinity of Ridley Scott movies is uh Alien, Blade Runner, and Gladiator, right? I mean, like that to me, those are the three that I think embody his work.
Hmm,
And everything else, like I said, I mean, The Martian's really great.
fantastic.
More recently, The Last Duel was exceptional, and nobody saw
I
it.
saw it. I thought it was also great. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, so like I said, when he's got a really great script,
yeah.
he always brings his A game. All the Money in the World was very good. I mean, like
Mhm.
there's a lot of really great Ridley Scott movies. Matchstick Men, another 2003 2004 ish movie.
Great movie.
So just proving my theory correct.
No, no, no. I that's one. Matchstick Men will come up again in this
But
podcast.
Matchstick Men, I think, to speak to like the problem I was talking about, like in the later 2000s, is I don't think Ridley Scott makes a Matchstick Men anymore,
Yeah.
right? I think it only got made because there was a healthy DVD market to protect that kind of movie.
Another movie of his, sort of to your point about, and I don't think it's such a great script, but I really love Black Rain. It's sort of a ho hum story, but he brings so much to it visually. And that might have been, I think that was the very first Ridley Scott movie I ever saw.
Oh wow!
Well, I was a kid. I didn't know all my directors yet. I was like 11. So we just went and saw it because like my dad liked Michael Douglas, as did I. And this was, like I was still choosing movies and my dad was still choosing movies based on who was in them, not who made them, which is how most people still choose movies, and that's totally fine. Maybe not now, but yeah, but after this, yeah, I mean, he makes the following year, he makes Hannibal and Black Hawk Down in one 12-month period, which
Yeah.
is both
And
not.
by the way, for me, being someone who was in high school, just getting to know his filmography, that was a really cool run of movies
Mhm,
for me to go see in the theaters.
yeah.
Um, but I think my biggest hot take about the whole Gladiator and Black Hawk Down thing is it really feels like he won Best Director for the wrong movie. Like Black Hawk Down is a great movie, but Gladiator, the achievement that he made, like the amount of cinema and scope and scale to award if you had to pick between the two, it really feels like Black Hawk Down was a makeup Oscar for not giving it to him for Gladiator.
Well, he didn't win for Black Hawk Down. He's never won.
Wait, he's never won?
He's never won. This
You're
is
blowing my
awesome.
mind. No, wait. Oh, wait. What? Wait, no. Black Hawk Down won something though.
Black Hawk Down won off. This is off the top of my head, audience. It won editing and maybe sound. He was nominated for Black Hawk Down. That's the year that Ron Howard won for Beautiful Mind. Ridley Scott's never won an Oscar.
Are you sure?
Look it up. I'm telling you. By the
You're the
way,
host. I'm gonna leave it to you.
no, no, no,
I
no.
swear
Look,
to
I
God,
mean,
I thought that he won for
no, he was
Black Hawk Down. Wow,
nominated.
that's
He was
bizarre.
nominated
Okay.
for Gladiator. He loses to Steven Soderbergh, and he's nominated the very next year for Black Hawk Down, and he loses to Ron Howard. Off the top, I don't know that he's been nominated because they snubbed him for The Martian for reasons passing understanding. That I'd have to look up if he's been nominated since 2001, but he's never won.
Okay.
He's
I'll
on that
take your
list.
word for it.
Yeah, well, look
I'm
it
gonna
up.
Google it while we're talking
No,
about
Google it. No,
it.
I mean, I
No,
hate
you're
to correct
probably
you, but
right.
you're proving your point about like that Mandela effect of like, oh, Ridley Scott had to have won for Black Hawk Down, um, but he didn't.
Interesting.
Yeah, because Black Hawk Down. This isn't why he didn't win, but Black Hawk Down was not nominated for Best Picture.
Well, I concede to you, the expert Ed. This is your podcast, so you're probably right. So yeah, okay. Well, that you're right. No, that's crazy. Well, Ridley Scott deserves to have won Best Director, and he deserves to have won it for Gladiator specifically because Who won it that year? Was
Soderbergh
Soderbergh
for
for
Traffic.
Traffic or Aaron Brockovich?
Traffic. Soderbergh, we'll get to this, but we'll just do it now. Soderbergh was nominated twice in Best Director, which hadn't happened since I think the 30s. I think Michael Curtis or Curtiz, I don't know how to pronounce it, but the guy who did
Kind of
Casablanca.
amazing that he didn't split the vote, to be honest with you.
I think, you know why I don't think he split the vote? While we're on this, I don't know that the vote splitting happens as much as people throw that around. Like, we'll
Yeah.
tie it back to Ridley real quick. Like, Susan Sarandon and Gina Davis were both nominated for Thelma and Louise, and people think, oh, well, they must have split the vote. It's possible, but I just, you see actors nominated, two actors nominated for the same movie. I don't know. I mean, look, if they release the voting, which William Goldman has always said they should, it would be so enlightening. Hollywood might also fucking burn down, but like, but I, I just push back on this idea of vote splitting. I think if you were going to vote for Soderbergh that year, you were going to vote for him for Traffic. Not that Aaron Brockovich isn't well directed, but I think, you know, I think directors look at the craft of Traffic versus the craft of Aaron Brockovich, and they're probably more drawn
Yeah,
to
no, for
Traffic.
there's a stark difference. But I also am so shocked that the directors looked at Traffic and looked at Gladiator and said one is better than the other. Now, Traffic came out later in the year.
Christmas,
Uh,
yeah, or
and so there definitely was, I think, especially then, more so than now, because I think now we're seeing things like Everything Everywhere All at Once came out in April and won Best Picture, right? We're
sure,
seeing winners come out earlier in the year and have more staying power.
right.
But I think back then, specifically, because we didn't have social media
Hmm.
to keep the chatter up about certain movies, the ones that came out in the fall typically had the edge to movies that came out earlier in the year. Saving Private Ryan is another great example of that.
Yeah.
And so I genuinely wonder if Gladiator and Traffic came out the same day,
Mhm.
if that would still be the end up being the result of the best director conversation.
Well, the crazy thing is, and I remember this at the time. I think I'm bullshitting this. I mean, I think I'm right. I think Ang Lee won DGA. So Soderbergh didn't win DGA, didn't win Golden Globes or anything. So
Well, that's interesting
yeah,
too,
so
because usually the DGA winner almost always goes on to win. Uh,
except it happened. Yeah. For people who don't know, the DGA is the Directors Guild of America, and the person who wins the DGA award is, I'd say, 99% guaranteed to take home the Oscar. There have been very few splits, but two splits happened in 2 years. So Soderbergh wins for Traffic for this year. He does not win the DGA, and then 2 years later, Roman Polanski wins the Oscar and did not win the DGA. So those
mm,
were two splits. But what's also interesting, speaking of splits, is in the 90s and in the 80s and in the 70s too, it was extremely rare for the Best Picture winner to not also win Best Director. It happened one time in the 90s, which was Spielberg wins for Private Ryan, because there was just no way he wasn't going to win. He deserved it. And then, of course, as we talked about, Shakespeare in Love wins. The rest of the 90s, picture and director are locked. In the 80s, it only happens twice. Warren Beatty wins director, Chariots of Fire wins picture. Oliver Stone takes some director for Born on the 4th of July. Driving Miss Daisy, its director's not even nominated. So rare. I think it happens one time in the 70s. It barely happens in the 60s. So we're seeing now a whole lot more splits between director and picture, which I think is probably a good thing. But I'd love to see more directors nominated, even if their movie isn't. And it's very rare that you have more than one director whose movie isn't also up. It actually happens the Black Hawk Down year, because Lynch is nominated for Mulholland Drive. So you have Lynch and Ridley Scott, two directors in one category whose movies aren't nominated. But you know, that's just something I'd like to see. Because one of the things I talk about, and this is to the Gladiator point, I think, for all the very deserved talk about diversity, I think we need way more genre diversity. And I know I'm preaching to the choir with you, Joe.
yeah.
Um,
As a someone who lives in the gutter of horror,
exactly.
as someone who enjoys it and also writes in the space, yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, but Gladiator in its own.
Feels like this year that might change though. I feel like you could right now there's absolutely a case that Sinners is going to be in the conversation, and I
Yeah.
think there might even be a case that Weapons could be in the conversation too.
Yeah, horror's
Both
having a big moment this
incredibly
year.
successful, incredibly um, critically acclaimed. So it'll be interesting to see how those leg out as we get into the Oscar fair of the fall. But right now, those two seem like the movies to beat.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a more diverse academy. It's also a younger academy. You're having a lot more international younger people, and
mhm.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think you're definitely seeing a difference in just what's nominated and what's winning. You know, I don't think
But
anybody thought
I
Anora was
mean,
going to win.
but from a creative standpoint, the achievement, like the size, the scope, how much this movie Gladiator zips along. All the performances are excellent.
Mhm,
It just really feels like Ridley Scott at the height of his powers,
mhm.
and also in a weird way. And I am glad it won Best Picture over these other movies because it almost feels like we're saying goodbye to that era of filmmaking too. Really, as we get further and further into the 2000s, and George Lucas takes over with his green screens,
Sure.
and that spreads throughout the industry, we're going to see less and less of this kind of thing. I mean, even Gladiator 2 is Ridley Scott movies always look great, but when you compare the original Gladiator 2, there is a stark visual contrast between the two movies. And you can just tell that the new one looks a little cheaper and a little less real. And that's just the erosion of filmmaking over the last 25 years since this one.
Yeah, it's crazy that it's been 25 years. One thing I noticed, when I saw my research, and I watched the movie yesterday. By the way, I had not seen this movie. I saw it in the theater in 2000. I remember renting the DVD because it was only DVD back then, watching it. Maybe that was late 2000. I definitely have not sat and watched this movie A to Z since 2000. So it was a trip watching it. It was I didn't remember. I remember the story. I remembered uh, you know, I remembered the sort of the famous or even iconic parts of it. But there were so many little details that I didn't remember.
Were
Um,
you not entertained?
well,
Were
that I
you
don't.
not entertained?
I remember that. Another, but you know what's funny? So that became a thing. I don't know if it's a meme because I stay off social media like it's the plague. But a line that I heard contemporaneously, like as I watched it, that I knew was going to be something where he says, "On my signal, unleash hell." I'm like, ooh, that's that's a good. And I think Russell Crowe um, improvised that. I mean, this script, we could do a whole podcast about the making of Gladiator, and we'd be here for 6 hours, and it would be really interesting. So I'll be judicious with that. But I remember walking out of the movie kind of saying that, like, on my signal, unleash hell. Like that was just the. But
No, there's so many great lines of dialogue. It's a hard rewatch in my household for a very specific reason,
yeah,
and it's not because I don't love it, because obviously I really do.
yeah,
And I think the movie is wonderful.
mm,
My wife has a strong aversion to this movie because
really.
her ex boyfriend broke up with her and then said, "Do you want to watch Gladiator?"
Oh my
And so she
god,
sat there through the whole movie, broken up with him, watching this movie. So when she watches it, she associates it
it's
with all
triggering.
of those memories. And so I thought when Gladiator 2 came out, I was like, hey, it's been a long time.
Mhm.
Here's your chance to purge that memory. And apparently I didn't know this before, but he just watched it all the time. So all she does is associates this movie with this terrible ex.
Yeah, it's funny. There was a lot of moments that I just took some notes. We don't have to do all of them, but they were just because I hadn't seen this movie in so long. I didn't remember the beats of it. Like I could have told you the story that like, okay, this guy's a general and he becomes a slave, and then he like, you know, and unleash hell. Are you not entertained? I remember the tigers. There are all these things that I remembered from it, but there were just these moments that I did not remember that really struck me. The first one, and again, I won't do all of them. When Joaquin Phoenix kills his father, played by Richard Harris, the way he hugs him and like smothers him, I thought that was
Mm,
fantastic. And I did
yeah.
not remember that in 25 years. I didn't even remember. I knew Joaquin Phoenix was the bad guy, but I just didn't remember just the details of that kill. And I was like, wow, I don't think I've seen it done quite that way before, or not a lot. I just thought that was, like, really well staged, and I just had no memory of it. The nice thing is when you haven't seen a movie in a long time, it is almost like seeing it for the first time. I mean, again, I knew how it ended and all the others and all everything else, but it was definitely. I mean, I wrote down "great kill" of Richard Harris. Um,
Yeah, poor Dumbledore the first.
yeah,
Um,
well, it was funny. My daughter's a huge Harry Potter fan, and this is pretty close to the end of his life. I think he's in the first 2 Harry Potter movies, so this is probably the 2nd to 3rd to the 4th last thing he did. I mean, I don't have his
yeah,
filmography in front of me, but,
yep.
yeah, I mean, he's in general, I think they did a great job with casting, like Derek Jacobi, just really classing this up. I mean, it's always in these sword and sandal epics, everybody's English. Even Russell Crowe kinda has an English accent, and he's Australian. It's like Shakespeare. It doesn't matter. Like, Russell Crowe is referred to as the Spaniard, and he just does it English, and you just go with it, um, which
You
might not
roll with
fly
it, man.
today.
You roll with it.
Yeah,
So,
but that's how they did it. I mean, that's why I was thinking, in all these movies, like, all these I'm not a big sword and sandals guy, but this definitely felt it's interesting because it felt like the old sword and sandals movies, but I also saw, like, what was coming. I got a couple, like, pre-Game of Thrones vibes, particularly with Joaquin Phoenix's incestuous feelings for his sister. Those aren't
yeah.
requited. I had not read the books. I don't know if the Game of Thrones books had been written yet, so I'm not saying any ripping off, but it just seemed like I didn't remember
I'll tell
that
you. I'll
either.
tell you. It's really funny. Fucking Game of Thrones, man. Like, I feel like they have made any sibling relationship in movies now. People are watching for that.
Yeah.
Uh, the my movie, The Inheritance. I can't tell you how many reviews are like, I think the twins are fucking, and never, not in any of the writing, not in any of the directing. Like, this is purely people watching it with these weird new goggles, these weird incest goggles.
Yeah.
That they're just
It's
apparently you can't have two attractive people play siblings anymore because they might be fucking. Uh,
Yeah, I guess it's interesting. Yeah, maybe Game of Thrones mainstreamed incest. This is not where I thought this
but it
conversation.
does feel like this is proto Game of Thrones incest for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
it's unrequited, but it's interesting because, like, this was also a big movie for Joaquin Phoenix because I knew who he was, but I feel like this was I could be wrong, this is off the top,
just really put him on the map for
like,
sure. Yeah,
mainstreaming. It's kinda like when Johnny Depp does, Pirates of the
Pirates.
Caribbean
Yeah,
or Nick Cage
yeah.
does The Rock. It's like, here's this really weird, super specific one of one kind of actor, like him or not, and he's doing his thing, but in a big Hollywood movie, and, I mean, yeah, he becomes, against all odds, kind of a bankable movie star. Not quite off this, but this sets up this is definitely. I mean, 5 years later, he's playing Johnny Cash and, obviously goes on to be the Joker and all these things in between and has a really good indie career that's still flourishing, but, yeah, this, and he's really, really going for it. I mean, it's funny. I remember when the line, one thing I did remember, which I guess is sort of negative, where he says, "Oh, Maximus is still alive. It vexes me. I'm terribly vexed." Like, that was sort of like became sort of infamous as like, "Oh, that line doesn't work." But he does have a line that I loved toward the end where he says, like, "Your son squealed like a girl and your wife moaned like a whore when we ravaged her." I was like, Jesus, like, that is brutal. I don't know if it's still the case, but there was a long stretch. Actually, it's not still the case. There was a long stretch where Hans Zimmer was scoring every Ridley Scott movie. This may be the first one. Um, and one thing I noticed that I would not have noticed since when I saw this movie 25 years ago is there's when they're I think it's when they're about to go into the arena at Rome. There's a cue. This is a little film nerdy. Maybe I'll even cut this out. But there's a cue. I won't scat it. That clearly was inspired. Do you know the album "The Planets" by Gustav Holst? You ever heard of this? Oh,
No, I thought you were just going to say that he recycled it for Pirates of the Caribbean, which he absolutely does.
sure. Yes. But
But
yeah.
tell me about this.
So this is a really interesting album that so somebody turned this on. I think I heard in an episode of Mr. Robot, they had used a cue. There's this album called The Planet. It's like 8 or 9 tracks. It's like less than an hour long. It was written about 100 years ago by a composer named Gustav Holst. And if you listen to it, you hear the influ you hear what Bernard Herrmann is going to be. You hear what John Williams is going to be, and you hear Hans Zimmer in the score. There's one part, I don't know which one it is. This had such a huge influence. You hear there's one part of the planets that sounds like the Death Star is about to blow up. I'm not saying John Williams ripped it off, but you just hear, but it sounds because the first time I heard it, I'm like, oh, is this Bernard Herrmann? And it's 15 years before Bernard Herrmann starts composing music. So um, I encourage people to like listen to it because it's incredibly beautiful music, and you just hear its incredible influence on film composition right up to now. So I thought for a second that they actually sampled it, that they just needle dropped it,
Mm.
but Hans Zimmer would probably be the first one to tell you like, "Oh yeah, was a huge influence on me and everything I just said on it." So, that's a little granular, but I just noticed it, and I was not aware of this album 25 years ago, but just watching it, I was like, "Wait, what? I've heard this before. I've heard this before."
Yeah, I will say because some of the action score is so similar to Pirates,
Sure.
that is one thing that actually doesn't hold up as well because I feel like it when you watch it, you immediately start thinking about another movie,
Sure.
which is not great.
Yeah.
Um,
Zimmer's
so
fun.
and
Yeah.
it's also frustrating because it was so distinctive when we saw it in Gladiator,
Right.
and then it got diluted by watching multiple Pirates movies.
Yeah.
So it's that era. I'm glad Hans is starting to get more experimental again. Like his F1 score was incredible.
Mhm.
Because there was a moment where he got very assembly line in the 2000s, which was not great.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's literally an assembly line. He also would farm things out to other composers like
Oh yeah, no,
Lauren
he's got a
Balfe.
whole team of people that are work beneath him,
Right.
that are all part of creating a Hans Zimmer score for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
His score for the last James Bond movie I thought was very strong. It was a very nice surprise for No Time to Die because when he got that assignment, I was sort of like, I don't know." But when I heard it, I was like, "Yeah,
you were like, it's
great."
gonna be the Gladiator Pirates of the Caribbean score
No,
again.
I well, my thing was my thing was
He's
like,
like, it's
"Look."
been 20 years, no one will remember.
Well, my thing was this, it's like, okay, he can do whatever he wants, so he must wanna do James Bond. And so
Right,
he must be into
right.
it. And when he listened to that score, for the most part, it's like, yeah. He was very respectful to John Barry and David Arnold. And yeah, so I thought he did a great job with that because I'm a fetishist about that, as you know. Um, Another thing I wanted to mention about this movie, then I think we can move on, or unless you have anything else you want to say, is I didn't know anything about Oliver Reed. I'd heard when the movie came out that Oliver Reed died during production. And I think he was sort of like um, for want of a better term, like the Tarantino, let's put somebody in a movie who hasn't been in a big movie in a long time. I'm not saying I knew who Oliver Reed was then, but I think that's what this was given, you know, there were a million actors they could have put in. And I really liked his performance because there's just something kind of insane going on, more so than even Joaquin Phoenix, because I've seen Joaquin Phoenix in more stuff. Like there's something, I feel like the movie, I almost feel like Russell Crowe's best scene partner in this movie is Oliver Reed.
Mm.
Um, and I didn't it was interesting because I heard that they had to like come like to rework the script to get him out of it, but it doesn't seem that way. It seems like he exits the movie, it seems organic because I know they were rewriting this thing. Again, we could do a whole podcast about the behind the scenes of this, and it was rewritten on the set, which is usually not a good thing. But yeah, I thought Oliver Reed was very strong in this. I mean,
Yeah,
all
I
the
mean
actors are good.
he's basically he's Mickey to Rocky, right? I mean
Oh yeah,
he's a great manager.
yeah,
So again, the casting in this is just kind of top notch.
yeah,
I mean Digimon Hansu. I feel like this was one of the first places I was really exposed to him, and
right,
he was wonderful in this.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, and Connie Nielsen, like
yeah,
it's really just that's why it so blows my mind that it didn't get best directing. Because again, just the scope of the achievement feels like it should have been honored, but. I am really, again, like I said, I am really glad it got Best Picture because, especially the past 2 years where Saving Private Ryan lost, and then American Beauty the next year was another small movie to win. It felt like it was due to have a big Hollywood spectacle kind of come back and take that award.
Categorically denied. Before we get to Best Picture, let's see if Gladiator was worthy of the other 4 Oscars that it won. So, Joe, Russell Crowe wins Best Actor. He was against Javier Bardem for Before Night Falls, Jeffrey Rush for Quills, Tom Hanks for Castaway, Ed Harris for Pollock. So, of those that you've seen, if any, do you think Russell Crowe deserved to win?
So I think yes, but Tom Hanks with Castaway is probably the one that comes closest. I think obviously Tom Hanks has already won at this point. So I
Twice,
think
yeah.
there was probably a little bit of spread the love.
Sure.
But I do think Russell Crowe was incredibly deserving. I mean, his charisma in this movie is off the charts
Mhm.
with him being so held back even.
Yeah.
And it's just it's a really special, memorable performance, crowd cheering performance. But yeah, I would say if I had to pick, it would be down between those two.
Well, it won Best Sound. I'm fine with that. I mean, do we need to debate if a movie
I don't think we
sounded
need to
better?
debate that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
sure. It
think
won best sound. Great.
yeah. I'm not even sure which sound it was. I think now I believe there's just one sound category. I don't know which one it won, but it's fine. I still have a hard time telling the difference between the two, which is probably why they combined it. Um, what do you think? Best costume design?
Sure, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah,
I think sword and sandal epics, period pieces, always kind of
yeah,
tend to deserve those awards.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the costumes in this are pretty fantastic, and you know, not something I know a ton about, but I think the costumes are gorgeous, especially seeing it on a big screen again. I mean, I didn't go to a theater and see it, but just seeing it writ large. Last award it won, besides picture, which we'll get to in a second, is best visual effects, which I think were
Yeah, I mean,
strong.
absolutely. It's a huge achievement. I mean, you feel like you've been transported to ancient Rome,
Yeah,
and honestly, it still looks great.
it
It
does.
looks better than Gladiator 2.
Yeah, I
Uh,
was I was surprised because yeah, because with visual effects, I always grade on a huge curve the older you get. But it's interesting because I read a lot about how they filled that Coliseum or whatever it was with thousands and thousands of extras. So it was still real people. They were still doing it, which is probably why the movie was so expensive. But yeah, except for maybe a couple birds or something that looked a little wonky just with time, I think that visually it holds up and it seemed very seamless. Like I'm sure they weren't fighting real tigers, or if they were, it was stuntmen, and it was just very, very well done. I had forgotten about that part. Like when the tigers came out, I was like, oh yeah, I remember this. Like this is really cool. This
it's
is really
pretty
well
epic. It's
staged.
pretty epic.
And now it's time to test our hindsight with the verdict. It won the crowd, but did it win us? Against Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Chocolat, Aaron Brockovich, and Traffic, Joe, was Gladiator the best movie nominated this year?
Nominated?
Nominated of those
Yes.
five.
Absolutely yes.
Okay.
Of those movies, I think Gladiator is not only the best movie, the most memorable, the biggest in scope. It feels like a Best Picture winner. I mean, like again, all of those movies are good, but there is something that's happening on another level, another scale of Hollywood filmmaking that it just to me feels like it deserves that Best Picture.
Mm. For
What about
me,
you, Ed?
yeah,
What do you
no.
think?
For me, it's interesting because when these awards happened, uh, I was I was very into Traffic. I was all about and Soderbergh's still one of my favorite directors. Um, I would say, on Oscar night when it seemed like Traffic was going to win because Traffic you know, wins editing, screenplay, director. Del Toro wins, which was the only one that wasn't a big surprise. It seemed like for a couple minutes, oh wait, Traffic might take the whole thing. And up to that point, like I said it a few minutes ago, it was very rare to have a picture director split, which is not so rare anymore. So I think for me, having not, I probably prefer Traffic and maybe even Aaron Brockovich to Gladiator. But the thing is, these movies are so different, which is what's innately silly about the Academy Awards, which is another thing that like I kind of want to interrogate in this podcast. It's like, the Oscars were started to promote the film industry, which is the function they still have. You know, George C. Scott, who was won an Oscar and didn't show up, rejected it. And every time he was nominated, said, I'm not going to accept it. And the reason he gave, and I'm paraphrasing, is it's stupid to compare performances to each other unless we're all playing the same part. So,
Mm-hmm.
i-
Mm-hmm.
but
I mean, for sure,
yeah,
there's something inherently silly about that. But It is what it is, and it's the best metric we've got.
Which is exactly what I
So
said in my preview episode. It's a, the Oscars are a consensus. It doesn't mean the consensus is right. Um, so here's the big question. So the appeal, was this the best movie of the year 2000 period?
no,
Okay, let's hear it.
there is another movie that came out that could not be more different than Gladiator, in size and scope, but in emotion and in character, yes. And that is Cameron Crowe's best movie, Almost Famous.
Okay.
Um, Almost Famous is I think an endearing movie that continues to find people like Gladiator is a fun popcorn movie that makes you go yes.
Mm,
Almost Famous is that movie that Del Toro was talking about when we were saying it's that sermon you're looking for that changes your life. Almost Famous will change your life when you
mhm,
watch that movie. And I feel like every time I've ever recommended it to everyone, it does it. There's a magic in that movie that Cameron Crowe captured, that is not as flashy as some of these other movies, and it came out too late in the year, I think, to really mount a real campaign beyond screenplay. But it has endured, and it endures because it reaches into your soul,
mhm.
man.
Do you know, I don't know if you're a fan of Mark Maron's podcast, but when he says, "Lock the gates," that's from Almost Famous. He has one line in Almost Famous, and that's it.
Oh, that's funny. I
Yeah,
did
he's
not know that.
there's a
That's hilarious.
scene,
Yeah.
you know it better than I do probably, but I haven't seen that movie in a very long time. I do like Almost Famous also, great choice. There's a scene where like the he's trying to block the tour bus from leaving.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
So he
Yeah.
goes,
Yeah.
"Lock the gates." That's Mark
Yeah.
Maron. And
That's
so when
funny.
you listen,
Now I have something to look out for when I rewatch it this year.
yeah.
Yeah. It's it's one of my favorite movies of all time. Like, I think that run that Cameron Crowe had from Jerry Maguire, Almost Famous, and Vanilla Sky, like those three movies absolutely shaped kind of who I am. And it still frustrates me to no extent that Cameron Crowe has been in director jail for like 10 years now. Because I feel like he's one of our best, and like I know the less said about Aloha, the better. but 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 like I don't think that is we never let one of our best never direct again. But yeah, Almost Famous. It's such a special movie,
Mhm.
and to me, like Gladiator is a fun watch, and it's a big Hollywood movie, and yeah, probably deserves to win Best Picture. But the best movie, the one that's going to endure forever, where people are going to be like, you need to watch this, is going to be Almost Famous.
We made a distinction there, and I have other friends who make this distinction, and I wanna get into that if you don't mind.
Sure.
You said that Gladiator was the best picture, but Almost Famous is the best movie. But
Yeah.
if Almost Famous had won the Academy Award for Best Picture, like let's say it was nominated, they punched through, which could happen today. Would you, let's say they're both on the ballot and you're voting, which movie do you vote for? You're an Oscar voter. It's Gladiator versus Almost Famous. Fuck the other three. What what are you voting for to win the Oscar specifically? Because this is something I want to kind of uh
It's so hard to have that conversation as an armchair quarterback because I have different relationships with both movies.
okay.
It would be a different thing if I had to vote in the moment, right? Because I didn't even see Almost Famous the year it came out. I caught it later, right? I caught it, but a lot of people caught it later.
Sure.
And so uh, it's like literally a virtual impossible. I know it's a great hypothetical,
No, that's
but
fine. Well, I meant now. Well, let's say like if
I
you had to
know,
vote
yeah.
now.
I mean, I get, it's like, I think to me, for sure, the real crime for Almost Famous was not winning the screenwriting award, because to me, it's leaps and bounds above the other screenwriting categories, and that's usually where the cool movie goes, right? The cool movie usually wins best screenplay, and then the big Hollywood movie wins best picture, right? Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump being the perfect example of that distinction, right? The cool movie got the screenplay,
Mhm.
and Forrest Gump, the best picture, like took that. And I feel like that's really where Almost Famous should have slotted in this Oscars, and that's the real crime. So probably if I was an Oscar voter in the moment, that's how I would have voted. Was Almost Famous for screenplay and Gladiator for best picture. But in retrospect, Almost Famous, I think overall is the stronger movie.
Mhm.
And again, it's one that touches your soul in a way that I think Gladiator is, again, fun, but it doesn't get inside you as much.
So I disappointed you a while ago when I told you that Ridley Scott didn't win Best Director. You were shocked. I'm going to make amends. Almost Famous did win original screenplay back in 2000.
No, wait, what?
Cameron Crowe
Well,
won
there
Best
you
Original
go. Well, you know
Screenplay.
what? Then the right movie got original screenplay. Wait, no, what else was nominated that year?
So Almost Famous won. It was nominated against You Can Count on Me, Aaron Brockovich, Billy Elliot, and Gladiator.
Holy shit, I really genuinely thought Aaron Brockovich won. I don't know why. You know what? That warms my heart. I'm really glad that
Yeah.
the Academy got it right on picture and screenplay. Then, so happy to be your first guest, as the hopefully will be the least educated when it comes to who won what.
No, no, it's not homework. So I'll give you my take for what I thought the best movie of 2000 was. For me, it was Castaway,
Mm,
and which I don't think it's a perfect movie. I don't think it's a masterpiece. Meaning, I don't think I like Castaway as much as you like Almost Famous, which kind of plays into my narrative about the 2000s. Maybe that's self fulfilling, but I love Castaway. I loved it when I saw it. I still think it's really great. I think that if anybody hasn't seen it and has not seen the trailer, avoid the trailer. Um, the trailer, Castaway is not a thriller, but the trailer gives away something that it really shouldn't have. And
hmm
what's incredible is that Castaway was made the exact same year as What Lies Beneath. Robert Zemeckis shut down Castaway so Tom Hanks could lose 50 pounds, and he kept his crew by making another movie. And so these movies came out about 6 months apart. And What Lies Beneath, which is a thriller, and a pretty good one, gives away a huge plot twist that doesn't come out until the third act in the movie. And I think both those movies are 30% better if you just avoid the trailer. End of rant there. But I think sticking with Castaway, I think that for me, I did what you did, Joe. I went on Wiki and I just looked at the release calendar. I started in January. I just went January to February, January to December, and there were some things I just forgot about.
Yeah, like
Whether
dude, where's my car?
yeah, there's just things I just sort of forgot about, and Castaway was something that I was obviously very high profile. Like while they were, Tom Hanks was walking around promoting like Toy Story 2 and the Green Mile with this giant beard, and either he'd gone insane and it was like,
Right.
"Oh, okay, he's doing this movie called Castaway, where he's on a desert island." So, like, my awareness of that movie, everyone's awareness was like 2 years almost before it started. But, what I love about it is that it's a big studio movie, and it's really experimental, and this is what I love about Robert Zemeckis, is that he was and remains a really experimental director. I think that's even true of his movie Here that came out last year, which, I think is fascinating. I don't know that it's great, but it's definitely fascinating, and I just think that
Yeah,
he
it was interesting.
it was
I think it would have
interesting.
made a best short film.
Yeah, but for a guy in his 70s who has an Oscar, who's second maybe only to, like, he's definitely on, like, that Spielberg, class of Spielberg, Nolan, whoever you want. I think it's very cool even when the experiments don't work that he's still doing that, and I think that Castaway was, like, a really, really cool example of that, and I think it's Tom Hanks' best performance, and, I've always liked that movie, so for me, that was the strongest movie of 2000. Again, I don't think I have the same love for it that Joe has for Almost Famous. It's apples and oranges, but it is a movie I like then and still like now. Our next category is spotlight. This is where we spotlight something from any movie, like a performance, cinematography, score, whatever, on its own. So maybe the movie's just okay, but here we can talk about one little aspect that popped for us in a movie that, came out in the same year of 2000. So, Joe, anything from the year 2000 from any movie that you want to spotlight?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is an okay movie. I think this is an exceptional movie.
Mm.
And I think it's a movie that was never going to get Oscar love because it is a genre movie. But let's talk about American Psycho.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Yeah.
so American Psycho is a movie that has held up incredibly well, especially as the financial industry, Wall Street CEOs, corporations continue to just hijack and take control of this country in ways that I don't even think they knew that they could when this book was written or when this movie was made.
Mhm.
But it continues to be one of the most profound social satires I think I've ever seen.
Mhm.
And every year it gets more relevant. And I remember watching this movie, and I didn't see it in 2000. I saw it on home video, like a lot of people did,
Mhm.
because it didn't really hit in the theaters. Again, home video saved a lot of these movies.
Sure.
And but I remember watching it and going, this guy should play Bruce Wayne. Uh,
Did you
and
really?
and yeah, yeah. I also, by the way, called Daniel Craig as Bond when I saw Layer Cake.
Oh,
So
wow.
apparently they should just call me when they need help
Seriously.
casting these big franchise roles. But yeah, I just it felt like Christian Bale had, especially that fakeness to Bruce Wayne. I was like, that would be really interesting.
Yeah.
And but no, I just think it's a wonderful movie that was never going to be in contention with Gladiator and Traffic and such, because it has, Christian Bale running around naked with a chainsaw killing hookers.
Yeah.
But it is an amazing movie from 2000 that absolutely has held up and absolutely gets better every year.
Mm.
And if you haven't seen it, you should see it.
Yeah. American Psycho is definitely relevant, and I know Luca Guadagnino is doing a remake, or supposed to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not crazy about that because it's kind of like how I feel about the Harry Potter series remake. It's
Sure.
like, why are we doing these when the movies are not that old and
Right.
they're still done exceptionally well?
Yeah, I'm not
I just
advocating
don't know
for
what
it.
you're going to be able to bring to a new American Psycho that isn't already there in the movie right now.
Yeah. I'm spotlighting Linda Fiorentino in a movie called Where the Money Is. Where the Money Is a perfectly do you know this movie, Joe? Have you ever heard of it?
I don't know this movie. Tell me
Okay.
about it.
So it's Paul
Where is the
Newman.
money, Ed?
It's so Paul Newman and Linda Fiorentino, and Paul Newman plays an ex-thief, and uh he's an invalid, and Linda Fiorentino is his nurse, and she figures out that he's faking it by rolling him off a dock into the water and walking away, and then he pops up and he's like, "Okay, what do you want?" And she enlists his help to rob an armored car, and it's a really fun, kinda light heist movie. It made 0 money. It came out April of 2000, but Linda Fiorentino, for people who don't know, or probably most, I won't even say famous, she was in a movie called The Last Seduction in the '90s, and this movie got a lot of attention because it was not released theatrically. They put it on HBO first, and then they released it theatrically, so she was ineligible to be nominated for an Academy Award, a rule they might not even have anymore post-COVID. Um, but she was also in Scorsese's After Hours. She was in a movie from the '80s called Gotcha. She was in Vision Quest. She was just a really interesting, very, I hope this isn't offensive, very kind of hard, broad. And the only lead role that she got besides Kevin Smith's Dogma was Where the Money Is. This is only a few months after Dogma. And it's interesting because she's with Paul Newman and she's holding her own. She's with
Mm.
Paul Newman very close to the end of his career. He's about 75. He only made 3 or 4 more movies, one of which was Cars. And I'm not spotlighting the movie's good, it's perfectly fine, it's fun. I'm kinda more spotlighting her because I think she retired from acting at the end of the 2000s, and I think this is a woman who, if she were acting now, she'd be on a streaming series and have a rack of Emmys. I think she's one of these actors who was very sexy, but not traditionally beautiful. And maybe there wasn't a place for her in movies, but again, with streaming, even today, she could be at the center of a really cool streaming show and would be, you know, a multiple Emmy winner. So it's really, I'm really spotlighting Linda Fiorentino because this is a role that's kind of complex. She's an actress. If you could check out Last Seduction, After Hours is a movie everybody should see. Gotcha's a kind of a fun movie. She's just somebody I think people should be more aware of. So,
Honestly, that is such an Ed pick. It is so up your alley from the stuff you write, stuff you like.
yeah.
That's a really really. I feel like we truly picked movies that are reflective
Yeah.
of our genuine taste.
Well, that's
So
that's
uh,
the that's the goal. All right, so Joe Russo, where can people find you if they want to find you?
you can find me on Twitter at Joe Russo Tweets. You can find me on Instagram at Joe Russo Graham. You can find me on TikTok at Joe Russo Talks, TOKS. And you can find me on Letterboxd at Joe Russo Film.
And you can find me on Letterboxd at Edward Clow. I make a lot of lists, which I put a lot of time in. Letterboxd is a really fun thing I'm fairly new to. So I feel like for this show in particular, that's
And still the least toxic social platform. So
it is. It really
good on.
is.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
you get the odd comment, but I think Letterboxd is a great thing. They don't sponsor this show, by the way, but
But
I
they,
will.
they hopefully will soon.
So that is it for Gladiator. Our next episode, screenwriter John Steinfeld and I will be discussing the best picture of 2001, A Beautiful Mind. We'll talk then. Till then, looking forward to looking back.